Hey everyone, it is PressAnyButton and we are back with another part of our action adventure series. Today we're going to be focusing on our enemy attack and how that interacts with our player health. So first of all, I have my ranged shooting enemy. We're going to walk through how to set everything up with this enemy, just because we haven't really touched on ranged stuff, but the principles are the same for both melee and ranged. We are going to activate our character. They'll be invisible in the scene because of what we did in previous parts, but we want to activate them so that we can work with them. Here you see I've got unique animations set up for each attack. So there's the initial shot, something in between, and then something at the end. I did this by splitting up that one attack animation that we had from before into 3 animations because it kind of had 3 rounds to it. Of course, I'm going to drag those into the animator so that we can work on those later. But the first thing we'll do is we'll create an enemy attack script and go into Visual Studio. I've already got my script set up, so I'm just adding it as a component. So at the start of our script, we've got all these variables and objects that we've declared. So we have a timer, which is the value that will regulate when we'll attack again after completing one attack. So we got our public transform, hit spawn, and that's going to be where our hurt box comes from. And then we've got game object hurt box underneath, container for that. We have a counter, and that's going to count the amount of attacks that have happened. So this will just count up to 3 and then reset afterwards. Alright, so we go down into void update, and we can see I'm adding a comment that the counter gets reset to 0 when we leave the range of the enemy. This is crucial as we don't want the enemy to continue off of the last attack that they were doing or to get stuck in an attack animation. And going to 0 using the counter will cancel all of our attack animations. And we also, with this else if, wanted to cover the instance where we're still in range of our enemy and the counter's gone to 3, so they've completed each of their attack animations. Then we'll use the method reset counter, which we'll take a look at below. And then really the most interesting part is what happens when we're in range of the enemy. So this if statement says, you know, if we're within that distance, then some things are going to happen. Our timer is going to start to tick at time, so like regular seconds. And if our timer is greater than next hit, so if it's ticked and it goes to like 1 second, then the timer resets to 0, and then we play the hit function portion of this. So to go through that, I set my next hit to 2, and then I enter the attack range of the enemy. The enemy's timer starts ticking. It goes 1, 2. On 2, it'll access the hit method, which will cause it to attack us, and then the timer resets. 1, 2, attack again. 1, 2, attack again. And then we know once the amount of attacks that we've done reaches above 3 for this particular implementation, then we're going to reset to 0. How does the hit method work? So this is how it goes. We have a counter, we increment it by 1 at the start of the method. So as soon as this method is called, the counter is going to be incremented to 1. If that counter is at 1, then the attack animation plays out and we instantiate our hurt box in the location that we want it to be instantiated in. And then we go back to the beginning, increment our counter again. So remember it was 1, now it's 2. And we play the second animation and we release another hurt box. And then the third time round we increment it again, so 1, 2, 3, and then we play that animation. And we also have void reset counter. If the counter reaches 0, which happened after the third animation and attack happened, we're going to set all of our animations to false. I also want to note that we've got a mathf clamp on our counter, so it'll only tick up to 3. So very similar to what we did with our player character, but instead we're not relying on clicks as our counter. We're relying on being in attack range and verifying the amount of animations that have played out previously. So here I'm going to set up my bulls. So I've got attack 1, attack 2, and attack 3. And I'm now ready to make my transition. So right click, make transition, and we'll do that to every one of our animations. We're going to add the condition, which is attack 1 from our idle to our attack 1, and then from attack 1 to attack 2. we'll have attack 2 be the boolean, attack 3 be the boolean for the third one. And then we're going to get rid of has exit time for all of the animations going in to a new animation. And we're going to make transitions going from our animations back into our idle animation. These can keep the exit time because we want those animations to play out even if you've cancelled the motion. And we're going to set those booleans to false. So when they're false, when attack 1 is false, we'll go back to idle. Now I've chosen the idle animation because that will be the animation that plays out when they're in range. They're not moving anymore, they're not running, so they won't be in any other state except from idle. Then we can clean up our transitions a little bit just by dragging that blue section there, and that should allow for, in my experience, sharper transitions. Alright, so a little demonstration for how our animations are going, and we can see that they're happening, but we still haven't set everything up for our attack script in the inspector. So we're going to go over to the section for our enemy attack, and we're going to make sure that our next hit is set to something that we like. And then we're going to repurpose something that we've made previously, and that is going to be our hit detection. So previously we used this prefab for our player, and what I've done is I've created a clone, and you'll see me drag that into there. So we have a look at this thing, check the mesh so we can see that it's a sphere. We've got a rigid body on this, and we've got the punch missile script. So all stuff we've done previously. The only thing now is to change the tag on this and make it a new prefab. It also doesn't hurt to change the name of it. So if you want to do this at the same pace, we attach that script onto it, set up the speed and the lifetime. And then you can see me accessing the tags here. That's how you create a new tag. We've done that many times before, but I've already got the tag set up, and I've set it up as E and then capital H hit, and now we should be ready to use that. Another thing you might want to do, unless you're trying to see that it's visually coming out, is to deactivate the mesh renderer like we did with our own player attacks. So here you can see that I've attached the rigid body, and I've set our collider to is trigger, and there's a little demonstration of what's happening. So we can see that it comes out at range and it hurts our player, which is really good. So how do we actually set things up so that our player gets hurt when our enemy does all this fancy flailing? So I just wanted to demonstrate that we created a couple more frames of animation for our player getting hit, like a hit reaction animation. And behind the scenes I've added that to my players list of animations. Alright, so you've seen my fancy health bar, and I'm going to show you how to create your own fancy health bar. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll get rid of the old health bar. So that's me getting rid of the old canvas. You're going to right click, go to UI canvas, and then you're going to go to UI image, and that image is going to be the border for your health bar. Now previously in Photoshop I had made a little border for my health bar. It was really simple. It's literally a box without innards and then a gradient overlay. So if you have any kind of photo editing software, I'm sure you can do that. Otherwise, the internet is home to many resources that you might be able to use. I saved that into my Unity assets folder, and it was at default to begin with, and I changed that to Sprite 2D and UI and then hit apply. It won't let me do that here because I've already done it. And then we go back to our UI image and we drag that image into the slot that says source image. Next I'm going to click on the button that says set native size, and then I'm going to rename it to border. And then we're going to create another empty game object, and we're going to call this health bar. This is going to be the container for everything, and we're going to drag it above and then just manipulate its size so it kind of matches the border that we've just made here. Next we'll make our border a child of health bar. Then we'll right click and make another UI image, and this image is going to be called the fill, and this is going to be the fill of our health bar. You're going to then click on the anchor presets box, hold alt and click on the bottom right one. We'll then swap around the position of our fill and border as children so that we can actually see the border through the fill. And then we do a little size manipulation to the health bar to make sure that the fill isn't spilling outside of the border. Alright, this is where things get good. You'll go over to your health bar, click add component slider, and then you'll uncheck interactable and set transition and navigation to none. For the fill rect, you'll go to the hierarchy and drag your fill into that box and watch it disappear, because now it is one with the slider. We'll set that to 20 because that's going to be the amount of health that we'll have, and you can see that our fill has now become our slider, which is really good. We'll then go on to the anchor presets for border, and without holding Alt, we'll click on that bottom right option again so that we can transform this health bar together seamlessly without having to manipulate its individual parts. And then you see when I click on health bar, I can resize the entire thing. I'm going to make it half of the screen so you can see a little bit of variety in this new application. And then with our fill image selected, we're going to go over to the color section, and you'll see a color picker, and then we'll change the color of our health bar. I'm going to make it the same blue that we're using on the border. And then just some light readjustments. You can see me just unparenting the border from our health bar, but still keeping it a child of the canvas so we can see it, and just manipulating it so that we don't have any clashes between the fill and the border. Alright, we reparent that, and let's have a look at what it looks like in our game. So there's our health bar. That's really good. Not a lot to go into there. Okay, now we're going to drag the new animation that we had created into the animator for our player character. That's how you do it. But I've already got it set up with its transitions. We're going to add a new script to our player character. You're going to call this player hurt, but I'm just going to add the previous script that I have. Okay, so this is our player hurt script. You'll see that it looks a lot like our enemy hurt scripts. They're pretty much identical. The only difference here is going to be the tags that we're using in the switch state, which are going to be e-hit and e-shot. So quick summary, because we've spoken about this kind of script before. We reference the rigid body, we give a value for recoil, we reference the health script for the character that this belongs to, and the amount of damage that will be taken from our attacks. We then reference the animator, and then void start you can see that we're setting everything up. So we've got the animator, the player rigid body, and we're getting access to the player health script. Alright, so back to the animator for our player character. From the any state, we're going to transition into our hurt animation without any exit time. That means that it will cancel all of the other animations that we do. And you can see that we have an exit time for all of the animations going out from the hurt animation. Now, hurt recoil is a trigger, so if you add that to your parameters at the bottom left, you'll be able to use it to transition from any state into the hurt. And once the hurt animation plays out, we'll transition into all of our attack animations and any of our idle and running animations. This will make sure that we don't get locked into the hurt animation. Has exit time is going to remain checked because we want this animation to play out before the player can do anything else. And the reason why I haven't transitioned from hurt into any state is because it's not possible. And then here you can see that we have a very basic player health script. We've got a starting health, a current health, and our slider. Now the current health is going to equal the starting health, and then we're going to take damage in the same way that we did with our enemy health script. So that's how our health ticks down, and once our current health ticks down to 0, then we'll go into the death method, and the death method is just destroying our game object. And I just prepared a little aside for you guys. With some of our scripts looking so similar, wanted to show you that you can essentially just replace parts that you want to replace. So if you highlight a keyword that you want to replace and then hit Control H in Visual Studio, you'll be able to type in the replacement text there. And for example here, I want to replace enemy body with player body. And this will allow me to replace every instance in a couple of clicks, so that should save you some time. Alright, now let's look at our player health script in the inspector. We're going to want to take the health bar, not the canvas, but the health bar into the health slider section. And after that, we should be good to go. So here's a demonstration of what it looks like when we're taking on one of our enemies. And this is what it looks like when we're taking on both of our enemies. Absolutely getting jumped by them. Now, as I said before, you can deactivate the mesh renderer for the hurt box so that you won't see it. But this has been another Press Any Button tutorial. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with us. The next one should be a doozy, as we are close to wrapping up this series. So if you liked what you've seen, please subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. But as always everyone, press on and keep creating.